Hi, and welcome back to the People Success Circle podcast. I have a guest today that I am so interested in interviewing because I know as an HR leader that this topic and this expert that I have will enlighten all of us about a situation in the workplace that is just so important. And with that, I want to introduce to you Mandi Pratt.
Hello, everybody.
I'm so glad you're here. So tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll dive into our topic.
Well, my background actually is in art, and I was a
Okay.
graphic designer. I worked in corporate and became a photographer, and now I'm a resilience speaker and a trauma-informed advocate and a
Okay.
podcaster.
Oh, that's great. And how did you make that career switch, or what prompted that career switch?
So I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing now. And it was only because I have a very crazy life story. Because of that, I felt so passionate about helping people prevent what I went through and
Mm-hmm.
also helping people heal
Mm-hmm.
through types of trauma like I've been through, and just kind of be in that space and, serve from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit about your story that helped you make that switch?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So I was married when I was about 20. And then as time went on, that person became abusive and ended up to be a person I didn't even know. Dr.
Mm.
Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And eventually I did leave. And about a year after I left, we had a young son at that time. He was a toddler and we were living somewhere else. And I came home to the house we were at, and there was a little business card tucked into the door jamb there. And it said coroner's unit, robbery unit. And I thought, oh, great. I knew who it was about, but I didn't know, which topic are we talking about here? And
Yeah.
there was a handwritten note and it said, please call me. And so I called the number next to that little handwritten note, and he was like, oh, hello. I'm so and so from the FBI. Ma'am, we've been searching for I hope he's ex-husband, for about 6 to 9 months. He's wanted for multiple bank robberies.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, what? I
Yeah.
had no idea. No
And
idea.
were you still in contact with him? Was he seeing your child?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
He was
gosh. Wow.
having supervised visits. And so the agent, just he could tell I was completely dumbfounded.
Yeah.
And he was like, can I come talk to you? Like, is that okay with you? I don't really need your corroboration, but I would like to talk to you. And so, of course, I was like, yes, please, like, clue
Yeah.
me in on this.
Yeah.
And so he showed up the next morning. I still remember him standing there when I opened the door with his briefcase. And so he came in and sat down at our kitchen table where I was at there and just kind of fanned out all of these surveillance photos. And I was like, my gosh, that's him.
Wow.
There he is, like in the hat we shared on trips to Mexico. There he is in the shirt I bought him for Father's Day that matched our sons.
My gosh.
And then he went on to list out like all of the dates and the times and the locations. And I was, trying to jot them down, but it was so many I couldn't. But I started to realize, oh my gosh, like these are times and dates after a supervised visit. And so I was like, oh my goodness.
Wow.
And so at that point, I realized, okay, we're on a whole nother level here. you know,
Yeah.
before, we're just talking divorce. And unfortunately, I was going through a lot of post separation abuse. But
Mm.
now we're talking criminal element here.
Yeah.
So, like, what? And so at that point, I was like, okay, I'm really tired of feeling vulnerable, and I'm
Mhm.
tired of this out of control stuff. And like,
Yeah.
now we're in danger,
Yeah.
not just from him, but God knows who else. And so I was like, this is the point, where I am not going to be a victim anymore. I
Mhm.
am going to do what we need to do. I went and learned self defense. And then, of course, he went away to prison. And our story is really quite long and involved because he ended up having two different sprees of bank robbing and having the FBI have to catch him. So I share that on my podcast for people to hear. And then the detective who caught him also was kind enough to come on and share his side of the story, but it's long and involved. So that's there for people who want to hear it. But yeah, it was just a wake up call for me, to realize this is my life, and not only my life, but my son's life.
Mhm.
How are we going to choose to live here? And I'm
Yeah.
done with being a victim. I'm done with this. Get me
Yeah.
out of here, right? Like I already
Yeah.
left
Yeah.
thinking, I want to go on and live in peace, right? But
Mhm.
so I had to take further steps, to do that. So it was quite a journey. And, I became an advocate and a speaker much later. So all of this happened. My son is now 24. He was
Mm.
3 at this time. So
Okay.
there's been quite a bit of time in between that.
Mhm.
There was quite a bit of trauma in between that too, more post separation abuse. And then, another stint of bank robbing and the FBI contacting me again and just on and on and on and on.
Wow.
So it's quite long, but anyway, I'm very happy to be where I'm at now. I'm remarried. My son is very healthy, doing well. He's about to get married. Not that that's the end all be all, but just,
Yeah.
we're both doing really well. So I'm
Mhm.
so thankful.
It's fantastic that you're doing so well, and it's quite a story. I love that you teach about this now and that you talk about resilience.
Hmm.
I think that there's so much packed in emotion packed into what you just
Yeah.
shared, and
Yeah.
it takes a conscious effort to make that
Hmm.
choice to say, I don't want to be the victim anymore, and I don't
Right.
want to live through this situation. It is my only
Hmm.
life, and I want to handle it
Hmm.
well.
Yeah.
So I actually do. I'm going to list your podcast in the show notes, and also would love to listen to it myself because it sounds like quite a story. And
Hmm.
this has led you to speaking about resilience and speaking about what you call the invisible disability. Tell me what that means.
So I think that the better way to explain this is to explain just a snippet of what I was going through at that time. So I worked for the Wall Street Journal
Okay.
back during that time. And I was a graphic designer for a smaller paper that they had. That's like the worst of the abuse back then. And I remember, and people always, let me just give this little side note. People
Yeah. Sure.
always think when they hear abuse, they think physical, but it can also be emotional. And that
Hmm.
actually can do more damage than physical abuse.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
back then, at that time, it was emotional abuse. And I was working for this huge company, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to show up. We were living in, uh, New Jersey out there. And I'm from, Southern California. So this was quite a shock. We're out there. He's going to get his master's. I'm working and I'm supporting us. And all the while, like I'm going through abuse and I'm trying to come into work and like do my job and pretend like nothing's happening. Right.
Right.
And so I actually started having panic attacks at work. And
Hmm.
so I had to leave and go to the doctor and be like, oh my gosh, like I still have to work. Can you help me? Like I need
Yeah.
medicine for this. And
Yeah.
thankfully that did help. And I only had to be on medication for a short while. But that's what I mean is a lot of people don't know what's going on at home, right? And
Hmm.
so you have employees coming to work trying to do their job. And
Hmm.
this is an invisible disability
Hmm.
because I suffered complex PTSD. And so, what that looks like in real life is it's really hard to focus. It's really hard to make decisions. There's a bunch of different things that I talk about when I go out and speak. But yeah, that is just something that, people don't think about and of course don't see, right? So it's kind of
Right.
invisible that way. So yeah, that's kind of what I mean by invisible disabilities.
As an HR leader, we have people come to our door all the time and say, so and so's performance has changed. It's declining, or they don't seem as focused, or they don't seem like they're something seems off, right?
Mm,
And oftentimes they don't want to just ask, like, how
mhm,
are you? Is everything okay? We just kind of go straight to performance, I think,
mm.
and not really know how to address an employee. So in your situation, did your company help? And or did they even know that you were going through something that made it hard for you?
Right. I think only my direct boss did, and he didn't really know the full scope of it or anything. He just knew I was
Mhm.
going through a hard time. And I remember it was so helpful because I felt like that was my little family there because I saw them every day, and
Right.
I'm in this foreign place, right? And it was helpful to be able to go to work and have that routine.
Mhm.
He didn't really dig in and, like, ask me about stuff or, like, how he could support, but he made me know that they were my family and that, I could say what I needed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was helpful, I guess, and it was just him that knew. It wasn't like, the main boss, but thinking back, it's like we're so afraid to ask for help,
Right.
but, you know, I wish I would have said, like, "Here's what's happening, and I would love to have more support." But
Mhm.
a lot of times when we're going through that, like, you don't even have the mental capacity to do that
Yeah.
because 'cause you're in survival mode. So I talk a lot about survival mode because I was stuck in fight or flight, and now it's like my body bears the brunt of that. But that's a real, real thing. So
Mhm.
it is important, like, when they're seeing something like that to, not just look at the performance part, but also asking them, like, how can I support you? And I think mainly just helping them feel safe,
Mhm.
because a
Mhm.
lot of a lot of times people won't say, okay, well, here's how you can support me. One, two, and three. We don't even know how to support ourselves at that point.
Exactly, and it's not like it's a situation that is commonplace. I mean, to have the FBI at your door and talking to you about your husband robbing a bank and it being right near the visits with your son, I mean, that's not common, right? And so it's
Right.
not like somebody could say, "Well, when this happens, this is what you should do," right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But I think people come, and I know you speak on this, so I'd love your thoughts too. People come with all different types of trauma.
Hmm.
It
Yes.
could be physical or mental abuse.
Yeah.
It could be so many other things, right? It could be financial trauma and stress. It could be family. It could be actual safety. There's a lot of different things. It could be medical. There's so many things that can happen that affect someone's mental health,
Hmm.
and then that affects work. Mandy, what are some of the subtle signs that a manager or an HR leader could notice if an employee is struggling? And what are some of the ways that they could talk about it?
Hmm. I think, well, like you mentioned, their performance, having a harder time getting their work done in the usual time
Mhm.
and making decisions and, maybe a lot of phone calls or texts,
Well, yeah.
might be a sign. Noticing, are they always feeling rushed or do you feel like, do you notice a tension
Mhm.
around them? What are they like when they go out to their car and they come back, and they're coming back in?
Oh, that's a really good point.
What
Yeah.
does that seem like? And, you could even approach it like, "Hey, I noticed like things seem a little bit different lately. I just want to make sure that you're doing okay. And I want you to know I am a safe person to speak to. Anytime that you feel like, telling me if anything's going on, I'm just here for you. I want you to know that."
Mhm.
That is helpful to have like that foundation.
And I would call that a well-being check. In
Yeah.
HR, as an HR leader, well-being is so important for
Hmm.
two main reasons. One,
Hmm.
because we care about our employees. That's
Right.
first and foremost. But also when someone doesn't feel well for whatever reason, not physically or mentally, they're distracted, right? They're
Hmm.
not as engaged in their work. So I think what you're saying too is just like if you see that disengagement, especially if it's a change, right? You have this
Yeah.
engaged employee that goes to disengaged employee and you notice something. What you're saying is you would have loved it if someone actually approached you and said something. And I'm glad that you were able to tell your boss. But you mentioned a few things that I want to comment on and really chat and like unpack a little bit because I think this, for people listening, this could be some really transformative advice for them. So when we think about noticing, right, something's not right, and we're doing like a well-being discussion and really checking in with our employee, I love how you said, ask if they feel safe. And ask how they are responding if they go out to their car or you see them on the phone afterwards. Are they very flustered? Right.
Exactly.
And then doing that safety check. Like, are you feeling safe? And if somebody does disclose that they don't
Hmm.
feel safe, I want to tell you, as an HR leader, we're trained to put processes in place so that an employee feels safe. So if an employee is going through domestic violence at home or has a level of fear in their life, we can circulate a photo of the person. So if they come into the building, we all know to call the police. We can check on you. We can walk you to your car if
Mhm.
that is something that helps, and or notify security if there's security in the building. So I do want people to also know that it's not just the employee's job to tell us when something's wrong. If we
Totally.
notice something, we want to
Yeah.
say something.
Yeah, because a lot of times they won't tell you because 'cause they're still trying to figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
I think to myself back then, I was still trying to figure it out, like, "What am I actually going through? Is this really abuse? And
Yeah.
this isn't really." You always think like you deny, you rationalize, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
also, like, you might ask somebody if they're feeling safe, and they might be like, "Yeah, I'm safe," and
Mhm.
not really, or if they got upset because they know something's wrong, then that might happen as well, and they might get defensive because a lot of times, like, with domestic violence, the person being abused will stick up for the abuser.
Mm.
So that happens too. But also I wanna say, like, a lot of times you have friends, right?
Mhm.
Employees are friends. So you might disclose to another employee, right? So that's something to watch out for too. And I loved what you're talking about, doing a well-being check. Like, that's really a great idea for everybody, to do that for
Oh, yes.
everybody, like, on a
Yes.
consistent basis,
Yes.
you know?
I teach one of the things I teach, and I have a podcast episode about this, is doing effective one-on-one meetings. And it's not just like what I call a drive-by where you stop by someone's cubicle and you say, "Hey, everything good? Yeah, you're good? Okay." And you keep going, right? But when you actually have an intentional one-on-one with someone, the very first thing that you should do, whether or not you suspect something is wrong or not, very first thing you should do is really ask, like, how are you? How are
Yeah,
things going?
right.
How are the kids? Just really build rapport so that
Exactly.
the employee feels comfortable talking
Exactly.
about anything with them, but
Yep.
also talking about any work challenges, really. It's
Yes.
just
Yeah.
building rapport with the boss because the number one
100%.
reason that people want to work is because of their relationship with their supervisor. So if we have these meetings and we dive into numbers and spreadsheets and results and things like that without doing a well being check, we're
Mhm.
really, really missing the boat. When you talk in groups and in stage, I know you speak a lot about resilience. And so, give us some advice for someone who is going through a situation, whether it's complex PTSD or anxiety, things like that. Some advice for how to show up at work when things are hard.
Yeah. Well, something I learned the hard way was having self-compassion.
Hmm.
I just thought I could barrel through it, stay in fight or flight, right? But that serves nobody, and I mean, at a certain point, you literally have to do that to survive. But to be stuck in that is so not good.
Hmm.
So I had to learn that I have to have compassion on myself.
Mm.
So I need to take the time I need, to care for myself. And it's not just like, hot bubble baths and, whatever. It's like I need serious help. So it's making sure that you find, a good counselor that works for you and then finding also what works for you. So in baby steps, right? So just a little something.
Mm.
I know that finding a counselor can seem like a huge mountain, especially when you're trying to survive,
Yeah.
right? But you can do that in whatever way feels comfortable to you, right? Maybe a friend
Hmm.
mentioned to you that they have a therapist they like. Well, you can
Hmm.
ask them for that information and
Yeah.
and then maybe another day you call them and you just find out the information. It doesn't mean you're gonna go see that person, right?
Right.
So it's just taking little baby steps, but also caring for yourself. So I remember back then, thank goodness, had a good counselor and she had me do like a menu
Mm.
of things that help me feel better.
Hmm.
So she said at the end of each day, you're raising a toddler by yourself right now and going through post separation abuse. This is not easy. So I want you to make yourself a list. So at the end of the day, I want you to go through that list. And if you haven't had a chance to do any of those, do that. So maybe
Hmm.
it's call a friend and chat with a friend. So I had this menu that I could choose from, which
Hmm.
was helpful. And it's already things I've already thought of. 'Cause, like, if
Yeah.
you've had a really hard day, you're like, "I can't think of anything else," or make another
Yeah.
decision, right?
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah.
that was helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really wise advice. Well-being is the way that Gallup defines well-being is 5 prongs. Part of it is work and career well-being, mental well-being, financial well-being, et cetera. There's 5. And I can imagine too, oftentimes when someone's going through a situation like you went through, there's financial well-being considerations too, right?
Mhm. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't. I mean, this was so long ago. The resources are so different. There's so many more resources now, thankfully.
Mhm.
But just making sure that people know about the resources,
Mhm.
prescribing them, because so we're already trying to get out of power and control, right? So if we
Mhm.
work and then somebody's like, okay, you have to call the domestic violence hotline today,
Mhm.
like that's also putting more pressure.
Mhm.
So it's just like, if you ever want some resources, I have some wonderful resources that I can give you.
Yeah.
If you want to contact any of them, great. If not, no worries.
Yeah.
There's just so many more resources out there now, which I'm so excited about. Even, on Instagram, people can find them for themselves. It's a lot better than when I was going through that.
Yeah. And another resource that I want to mention is the employee assistance programs that many
Yes.
companies have.
My
Not all
gosh.
companies have, but
Yeah.
many companies have employee assistance programs. And they are free to the employee and they cover not just counseling, but they do cover financial well being
Yeah.
classes. And you can meet with a financial advocate. They cover a variety of different things. And they're not just for you, they're for your children too.
Right.
They're for the whole family. And so I find myself I'm not in a company HR role at this point anymore. I own my own business, but I used to keep my EAP cards in my wallet and tell
Hmm.
all the managers, keep your EAP card on a business card in your wallet.
Yep.
'Cause you never know, and you don't wanna
Yeah.
have to go looking for it. You wanna have
Exactly.
that available for people right away so that
Yeah.
they have the number to call to get help. Because EAP is available 24/7. Like I
Yep.
said, not all companies have it, but it is a
Yeah.
great resource.
Yeah. I did move on to another company once we moved back to Southern California, and they had that. And I remember using that. So
Mhm.
I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, yeah, I think it is a really good resource. So, how can leaders shift from like a performance only mindset to a mindset of well-being with all of their team members?
Well, yeah, just thinking about, every employee is a whole person, right? So going to work is only part of their day.
Mhm.
What kind of foundation are they
Mhm.
coming from?
Yeah.
Right. And for some people, they're going through trauma now. For some people, they have gone through trauma.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And so everybody's so different.
Yeah.
And, trauma feels different for different people. But it's just important to note.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like how you said trauma comes in many different forms. For me, I am a special needs parent and there are autistic meltdowns that go with that, which do cause trauma in
Yeah.
the home.
Yeah.
And as an employee, I can say as a special need parent, and my husband would say the same thing, part of the decision on what we do professionally and where we work is how supportive a company can be to the fact that our life is not really traditional and we need that flexibility but also that understanding. My last corporate job, I will say, the CEO who I reported to, he was the kind of man who did really care about my family and my well-being, and if it was as simple as saying, I can't work today. I can't do this." He was
Yeah.
very flexible. Now,
Wow.
I'm not under any illusion that all companies can have that flexibility because not all roles are like that. But I do think understanding that it comes in all shapes and sizes, not trauma comes in all shapes and sizes, not just something that is visible, right? Yeah. And I think oftentimes we think of using our sick time for physical sick.
Yeah.
And I also think something leaders can do is really encourage people to take paid time off and sick time for mental health as well as physical health. Yeah.
100%. I take I have my own business, but I take days off for mental health.
Mhm.
So I have a place that I like to go to is like a botanical garden. My friend and I will go there on a work day because I'm
Mhm.
like, I just need a little bit of a break. And for me, refreshing in nature is so, so helpful for me. And, I know I could be doing a lot of things that I really need to do that day, but I know that when I come back, I
Mhm.
will feel so much better. And so it really is important to take mental health days just to make sure that we are caring for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Mandy, in your view, what are some unintentional leadership behaviors that could actually cause harm unintentionally to someone suffering from complex PTSD?
I would say something that makes them not feel safe or triggered. That whole power and control thing
Mhm.
is very triggering to me. So if I were working somewhere and somebody came in and demanded, stuff to me and said, without even like asking how I'm doing or, like having that rapport, like you said. And I remember when we worked, when I was working back at the Wall Street Journal, we had somebody who was like, okay, guys, like we really need to get this out on time. We're doing a special issue or whatever it was. And it's going to need to come out like a lot quicker than we've done before. And so we did it and we like busted our butts, right? And we
Yeah.
got it done. And she goes, great. So why can't you do that all the time? And we were like, are you kidding me? Like,
Wow.
we can't you this way, you
Yeah.
know?
A
So,
sustainable behavior.
right. So
Yeah.
just being mindful of, making sure that other people are cared for
Mhm.
and not, being so pushy or judgmental,
Mhm.
forceful, that type of thing is just so not helpful and triggering for
Yeah.
sure.
And I would also maybe add, those are some great points. I would also maybe add just believing the best in people and asking versus assuming that someone is not performing it the way that you need them to.
Right.
So often we can maybe just do something different than our boss thought it was going to be done. And that judgment comes in and that performance, but actually giving grace to others and saying, I'm leading the conversation with curiosity versus judgment.
Love it. Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it too. Mandy, as we wrap this up, I want to ask you a final question because your advice on this is just so important. If you could change just one thing about how employers approach mental health and invisible disabilities, what would that be?
I would probably say acknowledgement, just acknowledging that that's there.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, doing a mental well-being check-in,
Mm-hmm.
not even if you notice anything, just if everything's going fine, still check in
Yeah. Yeah.
because everything might still be quote going fine, but not really. So I would still do check-ins on a regular basis with everybody.
Okay. Great. Do you want to share anything else about your keynote and what you talk about? I'd love to hear a little bit more about your talk on resilience.
Yeah. So, everybody wants to hear my story because it is so crazy and it was in the news twice. What I really love talking about mainly is the healing part of it because it's so applicable to anybody. I mean, everybody, has gone through something. And so I love talking about that and giving people actionable, strategies and tools that they can use for that.
Mhm.
And in giving that, they can pick at least one thing that they can walk away with and start using
Yeah.
now, to help them. Because it's really my goal to help other people live safer with more peace. And I talk
Mhm.
a lot about trusting our intuition and acting on it and not rationalizing that.
Lastly, tell us about how we can get a hold of you and where we can find you.
Yeah. So the quiz, I love sharing that because if we think about it, how many times have we ever said like, gee, I really wished, that I had not trusted my intuition. None of us say
Mhm.
that, right?
Mhm.
We
Mm-mm.
always
Yeah.
are like, "Guy, I knew that, like, I knew it." So, I made that little quiz, so people can go take the quiz and see how they're doing on trusting their intuition, not just for safety, but also just in leading their life and trusting
Mhm.
yourself, and then they'll get the results of that, and that leads them into a little challenge if they wanna do a challenge to try to hone in, trusting their intuition a little bit better
Mhm.
because everybody can really use that help,
Yeah.
just not even in your personal life, also at work, right?
Yeah.
Trusting what you're doing there and not just HR, but also, the work that you're doing. Trusting what's best, that kind of thing. So anyway, I love sharing that. And then talking also about different resources that are out there now. I've done all kinds of different talks, like for colleges, talking to them about domestic violence, and then talking at different conferences just about well-being,
Mhm.
what has helped me over time. So for me with complex PTSD, yes, talk therapy was great, but I needed to add in some other things.
Mhm.
Just,
Mhm.
and everybody is so different. And
Yeah.
so it's nice to know that there's different modalities out there
Mhm.
and people need to find what works best for them, right?
Yeah.
Because
Right.
everybody's so different.
It sounds like you do give them like a menu, like you talked about,
I
a
do,
variety
yeah.
of
I
things.
share my own cheesy little menu and then
Yeah.
also give them some real resources out there
Mhm.
just to help them, lead their own life. Because I always say, like, everyone deserves to live in peace and safety, right?
Yes, they
And
do.
so, how do we lead our lives to do that, right?
Mhm.
Life is meant to be good, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be bad. And so,
Right.
we can make different choices and, just take, like I was talking about, taking baby steps, right? Like, if I were to talk to myself 20 years ago and be like, okay, you're actually better now and you're running your own business and you're married and your son is grown and he's doing well and you're actually talking about this stuff, I would have been like, no way because
Yeah.
I'm just trying to wake up tomorrow morning. But you think back to all those little baby steps that you take along the way. And a lot of times, like I would take, 2 steps forward, but I take 3 back.
Mm.
But then the
Yeah.
next day I take 4 forward, right? And
Mhm.
only 1 back. And so it's just like that constant moving at your own pace.
Well,
Yeah.
your story has been really, really interesting to hear. And I know that just hearing that story is going to help people realize that they can reach out to somebody at work and make sure that that's a safe place for them.
Yeah.
And also to help the leaders know how to handle it when an employee that they have is going through something
Hmm.
as major as you had to go through. So I really thank you for your time and appreciate it. And I will also add your podcast link to the show notes for everyone to see it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for what you do, Mindy.
You're welcome. I love helping people create great workplaces.